Today, I'm joined by Claire Mitchell. Claire is an award-winning training designer, facilitator, and coach with 20 plus years of experience. As part of the Ivy House team, she helps people to become extraordinary leaders and live an extraordinary life. She's here to talk to us today about how to be memorable and stand out from the crowd. Claire, I know this is something you've helped people with a lot over the years, so why bother?
Well, that is a great first question. I looked at the stats actually this morning in preparation for this interview. I was prepared to be shocked, but what I found was more shocking than I even realised. Most graduates looking for a grad scheme apply 25 times. 16% of those do 100 or more applications. And that's in a backdrop of when the Times top 100 companies reported a 15% drop in graduate recruitment. Same companies reported a 41% increase in grads applying. So there you go, that's the stats, which makes me think it's worth putting a bit of time into considering how you stand out from the crowd and how you be remarkable. And the great news is not that many people are thinking like that. Not that many people know how to be remarkable. So in actual fact, with a little bit of preparation, a little bit of courage, it's not actually that hard to do.
Great, yeah. So how do you do it? Kind of what does it take to stand out from the crowd?
Well, the first thing I think is to consider being remarkable. And I mean that really literally, not figuratively. How do you be remarkable, meaning worthy of remark? How are you going to be so memorable that the interviewers decide to remark about you afterwards, talk about you positively afterwards? Now, most people don't come at it from this angle. Most people think, I'm going to do a little bit of prep. I'll Google the company and I'll find out a little bit about them beforehand. Then during, they turn up, they're polite but passive, don't do anything to stand out, don't do anything remarkable. And then afterwards, they think all that's left to do is wait and hope. But actually, that's not the case. I think you can do things before, during, and afterwards to be worthy of remark.
Yeah, so you said about, the difference between before, during, and after. What advice would you give to people before the interview?
So before the interview, there are two specific things to do. One is do remarkable research. Just going on the company website isn't enough anymore. We've got so much at our fingertips in terms of social media that we can do really deep research on the company. So we can find out who's interviewing us, for example. If you don't know, you just have to ring up and ask. You can use LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is a brilliant resource before you go to any interview to find out a bit about the people that are going to interview you. Find out what articles they're publishing, what things are they liking, what companies are they following, and just get under the skin of them a little bit. That isn't so you can stalk them. I would not recommend going on their Facebook page and finding out where they went on holiday. That's just creepy and weird. But if on LinkedIn they published an article about equality in the workplace last week, what a brilliant thing to find out and be able to weave in to your interview questions. So definitely go on LinkedIn, social media to find out some good facts about who's interviewing. And the second thing is find out about the customers. Don't just go on the company website. Find out what customers are saying. We've got Trustpilot, we've got all sorts of different resources where you can find out what customers think about them, what's their reputation, what if they make certain products, what products are getting what feedback. They're one product that everybody's liking much more than another one. Really get up to date with what the customers are saying about that company's reputation and the products that they produce.
So what about during the interview?
So during the interview, whether it's on Zoom or whether it's face-to-face, there are some things that you can consider that will mean that you have a positive impact. Now, what I would say is you cannot not make an impact. What I mean by that is you're always making an impact, whether it's positive or negative. I personally don't believe in neutral impacts. I think you're always making a positive or a negative impact. So are you having the positive impact that you want to be having? If it's a Zoom interview, showing up a few minutes early, being ready to make a little bit of chit chat with anybody who's there on the interviewing panel, considering your backdrop, what you're wearing, the facial expressions you're pulling, they're all feeding into the impact that you're having. So are they all feeding into an impact that's positive, the one that you want to have, or a negative one? So they're all things you can consider if the interview's on Zoom. If it's face-to-face, of course, there's some hygiene factors to consider. Everybody would tell you turn up early. I actually think turn up early so that you can sit in reception, just ground yourself, do a bit of deep breathing, but also absorb the culture, absorb the atmosphere, be a bit nosy, notice what's going on. The interview has started from the minute you walk through that door. Make no mistake. I worked for a company once where they used to ask the receptionist what impact the interviewers had on her. And if it was rude or unfriendly, they did not get the job. So the interview started the minute you walk through the door. Somebody's bound to come down to greet you and to take you to the room. That's part of the interview as well. So make sure you stand up, make sure you smile, make sure you initiate a handshake if there's no restrictions in place, elbow bump if there is. But as you walk to that room, think about making some chit chat with the person that's taking you there. Some really curious questions can help you, not just to show curiosity, but to settle you as well, to build your own confidence. So questions like, how long have you worked here? Nice offices. How long have you worked in these offices? What's the local area like? What do you love about your role? Questions like that. Now, sometimes when people are nervous, they think I've got to start talking about myself and kind of over talk or overshare. But actually, to have a great impact, all you need to do is ask a few questions. Other people love being asked questions about themselves. So it's twofold, the power of that. Thinking about a couple of good questions to ask as you walk there stops you over talking in a nervous way and gives a really great impression, great impact from the person that's taking you to the room. So once you get in, where people would traditionally think the interview started, make sure you're shaking hands, smiling, take water if it's offered, sit down, and then don't fidget. And then I would say really, really be yourself on a good day. So don't lie, don't make anything up. If you don't know the answer to a question, it is completely fine to say, I'm not sure about that. Let me have a think about that. So be really authentically you. So to be remarkable, I think you need to be curious, asking questions, be really authentic, be really passionate. Don't go there and recite your CV. They've got your CV, they can read it. That's really boring. If you're planning to turn up and just regurgitate that, that's not remarkable. So what stories do you want to tell about yourself? What stories do you want to tell about your passions and why you want to work there? Because storytelling is really important. That's one of the ways to really stand out from the crowd, to be really memorable. The last thing is to come up with some really remarkable questions to ask at the end. Really think about what questions are going to make you stand out. Lots of people do quite bland ones. They ask about the holiday. They might ask about the culture. The best question I ever got asked at the end of the interview, and I remember it to this day, and the person got the job, is they said, in 6 months' time, what will the successful candidate have done that will make you say, wow? How will they have overperformed in this role? I thought that was a great question to ask and really made me think as well. So that's a great killer question. Also, make sure you ask for feedback. Let them know. However way this interview goes, I would love to get some feedback about how I've done and what's the process for that. How could I contact you? So make that easy for them. And then on leaving, make sure you're really polite. Sounds like another hygiene factor, but I think proactive politeness is really underrated when people are interviewing.
That's great. So once people have gone through the interview process, they come out, take a deep breath. What advice would you give to them post-interview?
Yeah, well, most people who are not being remarkable do nothing. They just wait and hope that they got the job or not. But actually, I think there's some really key things that you can do. So the first thing is make sure that you follow up. So send an email to the people that interviewed you. Thank them for their time. Let them know you enjoyed the interview and you're really looking forward to hearing from them. So again, a bit more proactive politeness. But the other thing you can do is consider any of the questions you got asked that you feel like you didn't fully answer. That moment where you come out the interview and you go, oh, I wish I'd said that. Well, it's fine. You still can through the power of email. So I was once interviewed for a job and the interviewer asked me if I had experience with a certain personality profiling tool. And I hadn't heard of it before. And I said, no, I didn't know about it. And we just moved on. When I got home, I Googled it, found out you could actually take the test for free online, found out what my profile was and sent it to the person that interviewed me and said, really interesting to hear about that tool. I've Googled it. Here's my profile. I got the job and they said I got the job because of that one proactive act. So take the initiative, take ownership of things that you can do, even though the interview has finished.
Amazing, yeah. Earlier you mentioned about how important storytelling is. Could you tell me a bit about why it's so important?
So interestingly, storytelling is one of the skills that's made it onto the top 10 skills that leaders are going to need to have in the future. And I think if we have the definition of leader as leader of yourself as well as of others, it's a skill we're all going to need to lead ourselves. So I think if you tell a great story, people remember it. I once interviewed somebody who told me she owned a flock of sheep, and we ended up having a really good chat about that. That is memorable. That stood out to me. I remarked about that. She was worthy of remark. Great stories are worthy of retelling. So I think stories show how passionate you are about things. They give really good examples. They bring to life the skills that you've got and the experience that you've got. So think about how you can make a story out of the skills and the experience and the knowledge that you've got so far.
So what about when people have to pitch themselves? How do they stand out then?
Yeah, more and more people are getting asked to pitch themselves, do a 1-minute pitch, do a 2-minute pitch, or a video as part of the application process. And it comes back to storytelling and standing out and being worthy of remark. So have a think. Don't just read out your CV. Have a think about what makes you memorable. So we've got a model at Ivy House that we train people in, and we say that the 3 stages of the model are to name your identifiers, talk about your focus and why, and then make an ask. So the first is to be memorable. Make a list of all the things about you that are remarkable. You might have done lots of traveling, you might have volunteered, you might have written an article about something memorable, and you might have a flock of sheep. But think about what is it that's going to make me worthy of remark. And once you've talked about those identifiers, think about how you can weave those into your focus right now. What is your focus right now? It might be to work in a certain industry because you're passionate about it. It might be to get a certain role within that industry because you're passionate about that. You might want to make a difference doing X, Y, or Z. What is the focus right now that you want to do? And most importantly, why? Because that's when you connect with other people on a human level. Be really passionate. Think about your why. Why do you want to work in that industry? Why do you want to do that role? So be passionate about why you want that. And the last thing that most people forget is to make an ask. Be really brave and courageous. What is it that somebody could do that would help you? So if you're applying for a job, obviously the ask is, consider me for the, hang on. So if you're applying for a job, your ask is to get through to the next stage, the assessment centre or the interview. But you might be asking, do you know anybody that could have a coffee with me? Do you recommend any books about this topic? What is it that they could do? Make it really easy. One thing that somebody could do, and ask that you're making of them to help you get closer to your dream, closer to your focus.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to someone who doesn't have a lot of confidence? Because it can be a really daunting thing going for an interview. So what advice would you give there?
We don't come into this world lacking confidence, do we? You don't see a baby trying to walk who falls over the first time and everyone laughs and the baby thinks, oh, I won't bother doing that again. I've lost all my confidence. Babies have confidence, all of us. Something happens to us later in life that makes us think we don't have it anymore, but it's just not true. We've all got the same amount of confidence inside of us. It's just that some people are better at tapping into it than others. Because confidence is just a set of behaviours, and behaviour is anything you say and anything you do that other people notice. So it's how you show up. So there's a set of behaviours, of course, that other people view as high confidence. And I could sit here and I could list those to you, but everybody knows those. You know, make eye contact, be talkative, don't fidget. You can list all of those, you can look those up. But actually the more interesting thing to explore, I think, is what drives behaviour. And what drives behaviour is our feelings. If I'm feeling confident, I behave confident. So what drives our feelings? What drives our feelings is our thoughts, your thinking. So if I hang out with the thinking of, I'm rubbish, hundreds of people have already applied for this job, I'm never going to get it, nobody's going to like me, I'm going to forget what to say, it's going to be awful. If I hang out with that thinking the night before my big interview, how am I going to feel? Unconfident. And then how am I going to show up? I'm going to be doing unconfident behaviours. But actually, if I choose to let that thinking pass through, and what I hang out with is a very different list of thinking, like, I'm really well prepared. My CV has got me this far, so they must have seen something they like. I'm going to really enjoy going to the offices and looking around. I'm going to really enjoy telling them about me. I've actually got the chance to find out if this job is right for me. If I choose to hang out with those questions the night before my interview, I then feel confident. I then show up confident. It's about what questions we ask our brain. You know, the brain is a really powerful, really amazing tool, but it's only as good as the way you program. So if you ask your brain, what if I fail? What if I don't get the job? What if I forget what to say? Well, your brain finds answers to those what if questions. If you decide to ask your brain really positive what if questions, what if I get the job? What if I really enjoy the interview? It will find the answers to those questions for you, driving more positive feelings, meaning that you can show up with more positive behaviours that other human beings associate with confidence.
Definitely. Love those tips. Thank you. Do you have any other kind of general advice or top tips for anyone going into interviews, whether their confidence is high or low?
Yeah, I guess you mentioned high confidence. So I always think strengths are strength until you can't turn them down, until they become overdone. So overdone strengths in an interview, the things that have really put me off are being over familiar, being a bit cocky, being precocious. So, I mentioned, don't go on their Facebook page and find out where they went on holiday. Weird. But don't be over familiar either. I think the behaviours you're aiming for are confident, professional, friendly, polite. But don't let that veer into over familiar, precocious or cocky. I think from everything we've talked about today, my summary that I wrote down, my headline tips are: do remarkable research, not basic. Do remarkable curiosity, not small talk. Do remarkable storytelling, not CV writing. Do remarkable questions, not bland. And do remarkable follow-up, not waiting. My invitation to you is do you remarkably.